Okay, it is exactly 2 o'clock. Lynn, are we ready?
We have started recording.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Theresa Gregory. I am in the Office of Federal and State Accountability under the Consolidated Applications and Finance team. I am actually a education associate that works with the various districts, but also I've been graced with the title of being the state ombudsman for federal programs. So today, what I'm going to do is go through a brief presentation that I have for you about equitable services. And hopefully it can answer any questions that you may have. If you think of any, we're going to make sure that you please put them in the chat box for us. Someone will be monitoring or I will look at it. Most questions, I'm going to try to respond to them at the end because I really want to get through the PowerPoint presentation. I do want to inform you that this information is going to be available for you later on. So it probably will be next week sometime. But once our IT people work out what they need to work out, we'll have it available for you. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Please make sure we have a little housekeeping to have your mutes mic, and of course, all cameras will need to be off. And then any questions, just place them in the chat box. Federal guidelines, ESEA Section 1117 requires that participating LEAs, in consultation with appropriate private school officials, to provide eligible children attending private nonprofit elementary and secondary schools, their teachers, and their families with Title I services or other benefits that are equitable the provided to those provided to eligible public school children, their teachers, and their families. Eligible private school children are children who reside in a participating Title I public school attendance area or are low achieving. Under the Equitable Services ESEA Section 117 and Equitable Services ESEA Section 8501, an LEA must maintain and provide to the state educational agency a written affirmation signed by non-public school officials that timely and meaningful consultation has occurred. And if no public school officials do not provide such affirmation, the LEA must forward the SDA the documentation that such consultation has or attempts at such consultation have taken place. The key elements to being successful with your equitable services to your private schools is communication. Under communication, you have the consultation, the planning, the implementation, and consistent follow-up. So you could be asking yourself, how do I complete these requirements? Well, private school eligibility federal guidelines by doing proper notifications that need to be done, and of course, consultations. We have some topics that we're going to discuss on the consultation that should help you as well. Other topics for your consultation, and again, key element, communication. Federal guidelines for participation. Private schools are eligible to participate in all of the titles listed: Title I Part A, Title I Part C, Title II Part A, Title III Part A, and Title IV Part A. The private schools must hold nonprofit status to be eligible. Now, the private schools actually have two options in order for them to participate. They can participate with the districts, which means any type of services that they are eligible for, and the district is actually having the same particular services, they can participate that way. Or they can receive allocation, which means that it will remain managed by the district, but they will be doing it independently. Private school eligibility. Um, a private school must demonstrate that it is a nonprofit organization. Okay, if you see the citing 34 CFR 77.1 and 75.51 will actually give you what you need for the nonprofit. But here is actually a definition for it. Nonprofit, as applied to an agency, organization, or institution, means that it is owned and operated by one or more corporations or associations which whose net earning do not benefit and cannot lawfully benefit any private shareholders or entity. Private schools that have previously declined the ESEA funds are eligible to receive funds in the next year. So if that means that if they declined it in one year and the following year they decide to participate, you can actually go ahead and offer those services for them and they will be eligible. Keep in mind that religious affiliated private schools are eligible to receive services as well. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. I apologize. This form is what we have as one of our examples for the private schools eligibility determination form. This form can actually be given to the private schools for them to distribute to their families to get the necessary income, the information needed to verify income to see if they qualify as considered a low income family. Now, all of these examples that you're going to see within the slides, I will be dropping them into the chat box. So you will have the opportunity to receive it, as well as after we complete the process of getting all the other information sent out. During your notification process as the LEA, you should reach out to all private schools in the geographic boundaries. Reach out to all private schools outside of the geographic boundary. Now, when I say this particular one, this means that if they currently have or have had in the past served students who reside in the district's attendance zone, go and attend a private school in another area, you should be reaching out as the LEA to that private school as well. At one time, there was a 25-mile radius rule that was in existence. Well, I need to let you know that it no longer exists. So please, if you were thinking 25 miles within your area, that is null and void, and you should be reaching out to all of them within the geographic boundaries of your district. Invitations should be sent to attend the meeting. Invitations should indicate on them as well as if they're going to accept or decline in the participation of the offered services. You need to make sure that you are listing all of your services available to this particular private school. And one of the important things for you to do within this invitation is make sure you set specific deadlines. The deadlines is exactly what you need to help you to show that you are in good faith and doing due diligence when you do your invitations. Here you're going to see a sample of a notification letter. And again, these samples will be included in the information that I will put into the chat box. And this is an example of a participation form, their intent to participate. This is just an example. It's not required for you to use it. I know that some districts already have theirs set up because when they do all of their titles, which you can do, you can send the invitation for the private schools to participate in all titles and get a response from them for all your titles. So I have seen that done, but this is just an example for you to use as a guide. Consultation. The LEA is responsible for initiating consultation. The consultation must occur before an LEA makes any decisions that affects the opportunities of private school students and teachers to receive equitable services. So within your beginning within your beginning planning that you're doing for your district, you need to make sure that all private schools within your area have been located and received their invitation. This should occur in the school year prior to the start of the services. LEAs should discuss the following topics. When you start your consultation with your private schools, you should identify the children's needs and services, the timing of the services, effectiveness, size and scope, Title I methods for determining the poverty, decision-making, disagreement, and documentation. So let's see what it is that it takes when we're identifying the children's needs. Needs must be discussed in consultation with the LEA relative to the amount of funds that's going to be allocated to this particular school. Now, your schools are going to know best about how to determine the low income of the families. That is why I had that particular slide previously about the form that can be sent out to them. And I would encourage you to use this form and so you can have the information that you will need in order for you to determine low income or low achieving students. The federal funds may not be used to meet the needs of the private school or meet the general needs of the students enrolled in a private school. The equitable services must address the specific needs of the students enrolled in the private school. And of course, documentation needs to be, documentation is required to verify the need, varies program by program. So when it says that the documentation required to verify the needs, it all depends on if it's going to be Title I or if it's going to be Title II or your Title IV, whichever title that they're going to be qualifying for. So the needs will be based on that particular title. Consultation services should include information about Title I Part A. The eligible students must reside in a Title I attendance zone for an LEA Title I school and be most at risk academically. The teachers and parents of the identified students are also eligible for any services. Title I Part C, education of the migration of children. Title II Part A, supporting effective instruction. Title III Part A, language instruction for English learners and language instruction for immigrant students. Title IV Part A and Title IV Part B. So when you're doing your consultation services, all of these need to be included to ensure that each private school is receiving the opportunity to participate in any one of these titles. Now, they can decline all of them, but if they decline, do wish to participate, we need to make sure that you have that documented and a signed form returned to you stating that you presented it to them and yes, they did decline to participate in the services. As far as your timing of your services, both parties should discuss when the services are scheduled to occur, including the approximate time of day schedules will be provided. As an LEA, you must ensure that services for private schools start at the same time as the services are available to the public school students, and no later than that beginning of the school year, unless otherwise agreed upon in the consultation. As far as for the location, your Title I services for private schools participants may be provided at various locations, including the private school, neutral sites, or at a public school. Refer to your ESEA section 1117B1C. Following consultation, a LEA may provide Title I services directly or indirectly through contracts with individuals and public and private agencies, organizations, and institutions, so long as those entities are independent of the private school in the provision of those services. Of course, we have another reference to 1117D2. Remember, as the LEA remains responsible, however, for the oversight of all of the Title I programs. So it still will remain your responsibility, although you are using providers that may not be within, that's going to be independent of the private schools. LEAs and private school officials must discuss the equitable services to be provided to the eligible private school children. The portions of funds that is allocated under subsection A4A for such services. And this again is in reference to 1117 in ESEA. And of course, you need to be open, and I'll talk about how that proportion of the funds is determined. Also, during your consultations, the Title I methods for determining poverty, it will be the same measures of poverty used to count the public school children. Comparably poverty data from a survey and allowing such survey results to be extrapolated in complete actual data and are unavailable. Comparable poverty data from a different source, proportionality, and equal and equated measure. I do apologize. Consultation decision making. It is the LEA and appropriate private school officials should be on good faith efforts of all parties to reach agreement regarding the provision of equitable services. An LEA must provide services and other benefits for non-public school students and teachers in a timely manner. They should be equitable in comparison to the services and benefits provided for public school students and teachers. And goal of reaching agreement will be the results of meaningful consultation before any decision is made or services can be implemented. Of course, we know that there comes a time where there may be a disagreement. We don't want it to happen, but it does. And if that is the case, what should first happen is that the matter should be discussed with the LEA official that is responsible for coordinating the consultation, the LEA superintendent, or the federal programs director. Now, if the response at the local level is unsatisfactory, the private school official may contact the ombudsman at the responsible SEA official, The ombudsman, of course, will be me. So that will be the next step to any type of disagreement that cannot be resolved at the local level in the district office. If the problem is not resolved through those means, the private schools officials do have the right to file a formal complaint. This formal complaint is in this link that's located here in the PowerPoint slide. That is a form that they are entitled to fill out. They have to complete every information about the contact that was done with the LEA. They have to state exactly what happened, the results from it, the reason why they are sending the complaint, and then of course they file it with us. After the complaint has been filed, we have 45 calendar days to investigate and send a written finding of the fact to the complainant and the LEA. If you have a private school that is going to file a complaint, and they do file one, once it is received by me, I usually contact the LEAs and have a conversation with you. Then within 45 days, we will have something from this office that will be sent to you as well as the private school representative to understand what the decision is going to be. Of course, if this decision is made by the Department of Education and the private school officials still do not agree with the decision that they made, they are entitled to go even further and file with the U.S. Department of Education. But those are the steps that we take if we have someone that is upset, and of course they do not feel like the LEA did just on their side. The consultation documentation that you will make sure you should have. The private schools themselves, and you can discuss this with them during their consultation when you first meeting with them, because all of the engaging in consultations with the LEA's officials to discuss implementation and successes and challenges, adjusting, amending their priorities throughout the year based on their students' needs, ensuring appropriate use of equipment and supplies at the private school, and evaluating services received from the LEA. And again, this should be upfront. And when you're talking to them during their consultation service, and tell them what you're expecting out of them when it comes down to self-monitoring. Now, when it comes to the LEA monitoring, LEAs must implement a process to monitor the implementation of the federal programs at the private schools to ensure compliance with program requirements. As the LEA, you should provide ongoing consultation to the private schools. Consultation can occur via school visits, teleconferences, and emails to the private schools. LEA and the private school representative should create a consultation schedule, and I encourage you to do so. Now, when it comes to the state monitoring, this is on the Consolidated Oversight and Monitoring Team. When they do their type of review, they're reviewing financial and performance reports. They're following up and ensuring that the LEA takes timely and appropriate action on all deficiencies pertaining to the federal award detected through audits, on-site reviews, and other means. And of course, issuing a management decision for the audit findings. Now, when it comes to the federal monitoring, it rarely happens, but when it does, the federal officials have the right of access to any documents, papers, or other records of the SEA, the LEA, and equitable services implementation, which are pertinent to the federal award in order to make audits, examinations, excerpts, and transcripts. Timely and reasonable access to personnel for the purpose of the interview and discussion related to the documents. Again, federal monitoring does not occur very often, but when it does, this is what the federal agency will have the rights to access. Now, other consultation topics that we have will be the control of funds. Funds entitled to materials, equipment, and property must remain with the LEA or the public agency. No funds go directly to any non-public school. The LEA or the public agency must administer all funds, materials, equipment, and property. Other things to be discussed during your consultation will be the equipment and supplies. Current federal regulations and non-regulatory guidance clearly state that private school officials have no authority to obligate or receive federal funds. Excuse me for a minute, please. Okay, LEA must maintain control of the funds. The LEA must not reimburse private schools. For professional development, the LEAs must directly reimburse individual private school staff who were authorized, they may directly reimburse individual private school staff who were authorized to participate in allowable PD as agreed upon in consultation. Aligned with individual student needs and program design, and any unauthorized participants or change in agreed upon expenses may not be reimbursed. Failure to participate in agreed upon PD will not be reimbursed and may be seen as the private school declining funds. Now, for your purchase of equipment and sales, all equipment and supplies that are purchased are the property of the LEA and subject to federal, SEA, and LEA inventory requirements. A public agency must keep title to and exercise continuing administrative control of all equipment and supplies that the subgrantee acquires with the program funds. You have the part for the asset management. Inventory components, and then the inventory shall contain the same requirements for any equipment purchased with federal funds, and there's the citing for it. Inventory frequency. A physical inventory of equipment items must be taken, and the results reconciled with the inventory records at least once every 2 years. Maintenance procedures. The LEA and the private school officials should ensure adequate maintenance procedures are implemented to keep the equipment in good condition. Your safeguards. Adequate safeguards must be in place related to the loss, damage, or theft of the equipment. Any loss, damage, or theft should be investigated and fully documented. The LEA and the private school officials must ensure equipment and supplies are used only for allowable purposes of the program. Now let's discuss the period of use. LEAs may place equipment and supplies in a private school for the period of the time needed for the program. The LEA shall remove equipment or supplies from a private school if the equipment or supplies are no longer needed for the purpose of the program, or removal is necessary to avoid use of the equipment or sales for other than program purposes. This you see on the screen is actually a sample of a consultation checklist that you will have for the districts. And as you can see, it's just the discussion of how needs of eligible private school students and teachers will be assessed. And all of these things you go through on a checklist that you would use when you're talking to your private schools. And here is more of a continuation of the checklist itself. A planning sample agenda that you can use when you're actually planning to do your private school consultation. That's provided if you're not already going to include them in your Title I's that you're going to be doing, or Title II's, whatever title is going to be. Because as I stated before, we do see quite often where districts have a person that wears more than one hat. So therefore, they're going to go in and do all of their meetings at one particular time, and that can be done. So you would just have a listing of all your titles and the private school people included. Now, this is important because it is the sample needs assessment and program development plan. Again, this is going to be in this, the sample is going to be in the information that I'm going to place in the Dropbox. And you can have it to use to start your necessary needs assessment that's for the private schools when you have your consultation. And this is page 2 of it. A simple thing of a sign-in sheet is going to be needed because you're going to have to report in your notes and into your plans that you place in GEMS about who attended the meeting. And this is a way to do it, having their signature, name and title, especially when they're coming from the private school and are participating. This in turn shows good effort that you're doing due diligence to make sure that you are contacting your private schools and you are extending the offers to them to participate in the programs. Again, a sample district consultation with the private schools, and this is a timeline. I encourage you to set a timeline so that when you meet with the private schools, they'll know what particular time is going to hold. For instance, when the decision is going to be made about who is going to, what funding we're going to receive, what our allocation is going to be. And once that consultation happens, then when was my intent letter going to be received? All of this needs to be discussed during the time that you talk with your districts, your private school officials, so that you can have that open line of communication and honesty, and of course, doing due diligence. As we wrap up, please remember, consultation should be conducted annually. Establish timelines for all services. Keep an open line of communications with all schools. Provide one-on-one support to the private schools to ensure they have a comprehensive understanding of federal program guidelines and procedures. Ensure all physical property will be maintained under federal guidelines and requirement. And all LEAs must or should show due diligence. Overall, I ask that you build a strong relationship with your private schools. And these are some references, and I am going to drop them in the chat box for you as well as that other one. While at that time, I'm going to give you my information, my email address, my telephone number. So if you have any questions, you can call me. If you have anything that you want me to set up an appointment for us to meet and have a one-on-one conversation about it, send me an email or just give me a call. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and let you send any questions that you may have while I put this information in the chat box. Do we have any questions? And it is not letting me drop this in there. All right. Okay, can you show the screen that was between the plan sample agenda and the sign-in sheet? Sure. Plan sample and the sign-in. Yeah. The needs assessment is the one that was lower. And yes, to answer your question about the PowerPoints, it's going to be available once we actually, and it'll probably be next week. And I would say that once IT gets through and what they have to do, then it will be, an email will be sent out to you all to let you know where to locate it. And again, I cannot get the actual to let me attach this email, but that I will get the samples out to you because I wanted to give you the samples for all of the forms that I have on here and the sample letters. I mean, it's not letting me drop it in the chat, but more than copying and pasting, and that's going to be a little too much. So I can get that out to you next week when the time will be available for the PowerPoint. Devana has a question. Hi, Devana. Title 2, how long should we give the private school an opportunity to use funds before we move them back to the district? With any of your titles, they actually should have the full year to actually use it. If they can't use it within that certain period of time of the year that you're designating for them, then I can advise you to move it back at that time. But they should have the opportunity to use it within that full year. I hope that answered your question, Devana. The informational consultation should be before the private schools are required to participate or opt out, correct? It should be because you want to know if they're going to be participating or not, if they are interested. And that's what you need to find out. I would do an interest letter, an intent letter. And then, of course, once you find out their intent, invite them to the meeting. And I have had them to see, I have seen where districts have actually set up the meeting, sent out the intent letter with the date in the intent letter, and they send it back to let them know. Of course, they gave them specific deadline when to have this form back in before their meeting. Now, once again, once they've actually missed that deadline and they have not responded to you, I can encourage you to reach out to them to ensure that they do not have it, do not want to participate. And if they returned it to you, if the letters were returned by the mail, you need to keep all of that documented, because what that is showing due diligence on your part as a district LEA that you did what you needed to do to contact the private schools. Any other questions? I hope that question was it, Lisa. If you'd if that answered your question, of course not. If not, then I do have time for you later on that we can discuss it. Are there any other questions? Again, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you sitting in, bearing through this lovely PowerPoint presentation that I had, because I know PowerPoints are not very interesting, but I hope you got a lot of information from this. Again, I will make sure that each one of you will receive all of the samples that I have. And of course, the PowerPoint, again, I can stress that it probably will be next week, hopefully, if things work out, but we will get the information out to you. And if you have any other further questions that you need, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you all very much for your time, and I hope you all have a great day.